For years, I believed I had been betrayed by the two people I trusted most. The man I loved, and the woman I called my sister. He left me when our son was still a baby. And she, my best friend, disappeared from my life after stealing everything I thought I had. But what I didn't know is that the truth was hidden in silence, and that it would be my own son who would reveal everything. A forgotten letter, a hushed secret, and a twist that I could never have imagined. Today, with a lighter heart and eyes full of memories, I decided to tell this story. Not to blame anyone, but to show that sometimes even the greatest pain can hide an intention, and that forgiveness can be born when the truth finally comes to light. If you've ever loved, been betrayed, or had to rebuild yourself from scratch, this story is for you. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Real stories, full of emotion, that touch your heart. My name is Clara, and for a long time I believed that the worst day of my life was the day Rodrigo left me. But today, after so many years, and after everything that happened, I understood that in fact, the worst day was the one that came after. The day I discovered that everything I thought I knew about that story was a lie. And it was my son, my boy, the son he left me, who told me the truth, a truth that still hurts me to remember. But if you want to know why I cried so much that afternoon with him on the couch, why my chest felt like it was going to burst, and why I asked for forgiveness for something I hadn't even done, then listen. Because this is not just a story about betrayal. It is a story about silence, pride, love, and redemption. I met Rodrigo when I was 22. We went to the same college, but it was in a bar on a hot March night that our lives first crossed paths. He had that kind of natural charm that made him look like he didn't have to try to be noticed. He wasn't the best looking, or the tallest, but there was something about the way he spoke, calmly, as if the whole world felt less urgent when he was around, that made people pay attention. And I, of course, was no different. At the time, I was living with Sophia, my best friend since high school. We shared a small rented apartment near the college, and our friendship was the kind that would make anyone envious. We slept in the same room, shared secrets, cried together after breakups, and celebrated every little achievement as if it were our own. When I told her about Rodrigo, she was happy for me. At least that's what it seemed like. In the first few months, everything between Rodrigo and me was light, fun, like a nice breeze at the end of the afternoon. He was kind, he listened to me, he took me to places I had never been, and best of all, he seemed to like me just the way I was. No games, no need to transform me into someone else. It was all so good, so natural, that I didn't even notice when I started to distance myself from Sophia. Not in a bad way, but life as a couple, you know. We want to enjoy it. We want to live the good life. And she, in turn, started to become different, quieter, more absent. I asked if everything was okay, and she said yes, but I felt that something was changing, and that made me uncomfortable. 2 years later, Rodrigo and I were living together, and shortly after, Miguel came along, our son, my greatest joy, my reason for breathing, but also the beginning of what I now call the time of cracks. I was 26 years old when one Tuesday morning, he looked me in the eyes and told me he didn't love me anymore. Like this. No anger, no fighting, no arguing. I don't love you anymore, Clara. My knees were weak. My ears were ringing. Miguel was only a year and a half old, and I was exhausted, getting little sleep, trying to keep up with the house, the work, the baby. I didn't understand. How could he not love me anymore? When did this happen? For months, maybe more, he said, looking at the floor. I tried. I swear I tried. But it's not working anymore. And I'm with someone else. I remember holding on to the kitchen table because the world felt like it was spinning. My throat was dry. My words were stuck. He changed me. It was that simple. He changed me while I was giving him a bottle at 3 a.m, while I was doing laundry and beating myself up for being too tired to have sex. But the worst part wasn't that. The worst part came when he said the woman's name, Sophia. At that moment, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I just closed my eyes and felt such a sharp pain in my chest that I thought I was going to die right there. My best friend. The only person I trusted enough to leave alone with my son. The woman who knew all my fears, my traumas, my dreams. "You two," I managed to whisper. He lowered his head. He said it had happened, that it wasn't planned, that they had gotten closer after a fight we had, that she understood him, listened to him, that they had fallen in love, that they were together now. That day I took him out of the house. I stayed with Miguel, of course, and I locked myself in my room for 3 days, unable to eat, unable to look at anyone. Sophia's messages piled up on my phone. I deleted them all without reading them. She tried to come over, but I told her to leave. She called, but I didn't answer. After that, I never spoke to her again. Never. Not at their wedding, not at the birth of their daughter, not at the inevitable encounters in life. Nothing. Just silence. And inside me, a scar that never stopped burning. Miguel grew up seeing his father every other weekend. Rodrigo did his best to be present, but I always kept my distance. Not out of revenge, but because I needed to protect what little I had left of myself. And then, 6 months ago, something happened that I never expected. Miguel, now 17, came into the room, sat on the couch, and looked at me as if he were carrying the weight of the world. He said he needed to tell me something. Something he had discovered. Something he thought I deserved to know. I thought it was something silly, maybe a problem at school. But when he started talking, my heart stopped. Because what he told me changed everything. And if you think Rodrigo was the villain of this story, or that Sophia was just a common traitor, wait until you hear what my son discovered in secret. Because the truth, this damn truth, can be much crueler than any betrayal. I remember the sound of the rain that day. It dripped gently, rhythmically, against the living room windows. It was late afternoon, and I was sitting with a mug of tea in my hands, while Miguel approached slowly, as if each step required courage. When he sat down on the couch next to me, I noticed that there was something different in his gaze. It wasn't sadness. It was something deeper, a kind of weight that someone only carries when they know that everything is about to change. "Mom," he began, and I felt my spine go cold. "I need to tell you something. It's about Dad, and about Sophia." At that moment, my entire body froze. Her name was still a knife, even after so many years. But Miguel never brought it up. He knew how much it hurt me. He knew it was forbidden territory. And yet, that day, he insisted. I found out some things, but I swear it wasn't by snooping around. I swear. It happened by accident. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my neck. He took a deep breath and took something out of his pocket. An envelope. Yellowed, carefully folded. It had Rodrigo's name written on the front. His handwriting, recognizable even after all this time. I found this envelope hidden at the bottom of a box in Sophia's office. I was looking for some documents for my sister's school, and I ended up finding this. I thought it was something old, but, "Mom, you need to read this." He handed me the envelope. I shivered. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. It was dated December 2011, about 2 months before Rodrigo left me. That was already a punch in the gut. The letter began with a sentence that chilled me to the core. "Sophia, what we did should never have happened." My vision blurred. I continued reading. "You know I love Clara. But that night, that moment of weakness, I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the drinking. Maybe it was the desperation of feeling far away from her. But I can't keep lying. I can't look at my family and pretend everything is okay. I feel like crap. You said you wouldn't tell anything, that this would die with us. And I believed you. But now, with you pressuring me, threatening to tell me everything, I need to make a choice." I felt a chill run down my spine. Miguel, silent beside me, was clasping his hands tightly. "I won't let you use what happened to destroy Clara. I'm going to tell her everything, before you tell her your way. The letter ended abruptly. There was no signature, but the paper carried the faint scent of something old. I was in shock. I looked at Miguel. What? What does that mean? He bit his lips and replied, "There's more, Mom. I didn't just find this letter. There was another one. From Sophia. Hidden inside. Also written at that time. And you need to know what she did. What she threatened to do." He stood up, went to his backpack and brought out another folded paper. This time, it was in Sophia's delicate and familiar handwriting. "Rodrigo, you know I can end it all. She trusts me. She always has. I'm the only person she believes in. If you tell her what happened, she'll never forgive you. But if you accept what I'm proposing, if you come with me, I promise Clara will never know. She'll think it was your decision, that you just fell in love with someone else. It will hurt, yes, but at least she'll keep thinking that was all it was. And Miguel will grow up without any hard feelings." The letter continued with more subtle blackmail. Things like, "You have until Friday to decide. I don't want to destroy Clara, but if you force me, I won't hesitate." I couldn't breathe properly. I stood up slowly, still holding the papers, and walked to the window, where the rain was already turning into a storm. Outside, everything looked the same, but inside me, everything had changed. "Mom," Miguel's voice came low. "Do you understand?" I understood. I understood that maybe Rodrigo hadn't left me out of love. Maybe he was forced to choose between betraying me with words or hurting me with the truth, and he chose what he thought would hurt less. But why? Why did he accept? Why didn't he fight for me? "There's one more thing," Miguel said, hesitating. "Something my father told me 2 years ago, but I only understood it now. He once told me that sometimes protecting someone means letting them hate you." The words echoed like thunder. I walked back to the couch, sat down, and stared at my son. That boy who grew up believing that his father was the villain in my story, and who was now showing me that perhaps the real villain had been silence. "Mom, do you want to know why Dad accepted all this?" I just nodded, and Miguel, with tears in his eyes, said, "Because you were pregnant again. And you lost the baby in the 3rd month. Remember? Back then?" Yes, I remembered. I never forgot. That pain, that sudden bleeding, that night when I thought everything was normal, and the next day, nothing was. Sophia knew, and she told him that if he told you the truth at that moment, she would destroy you forever. The tear ran down my face before I even realized it. Rodrigo didn't betray me the way I thought. He did abandon me, but maybe it was to protect me from an even greater pain, or maybe not. Maybe it was just cowardice. But if he had known that one day it would all come to light, if he had known that our son would find out and tell me, would he have done anything differently? I don't know. But now, I needed to decide what to do with this truth, because someone there still owed an apology, and maybe that someone was me. That night, after Miguel went to bed, I was alone in the living room for hours. The lights were off, the TV was off, and the envelope with the letters was on the table, as if it were looking at me, judging me, demanding something from me. For years I had been a prisoner of a simple narrative. I had been betrayed, abandoned, destroyed by 2 people I loved. And now, that story had been shattered. The pieces Miguel had given me didn't change what had happened, but they did change the meaning. And that hurt more than any betrayal. Because if Rodrigo did all that trying to protect me, then why did I still feel angry at him? Why was there still that open wound inside me that screamed every time I saw his face during Sunday visits? Had I been wrong all along? Or was it just that I didn't want to admit that I was also part of it? The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called him. The phone rang 3 times. I almost hung up. But then he answered. "Hello?" The voice was the same. A little more tired, deeper, but still familiar. And for a second, my throat caught. "Rodrigo, it's me, Clara." There was silence on the other end of the line. A silence full of memories, old pains and words that were never said. "Clara, is everything okay with Miguel?" "Okay, he's fine." I took a deep breath. But I need to talk to you. Alone. It's important. More silence. Okay, he said finally. When? Today? Here at home? At 7? I'll be there. I hung up before another word could come out. My heart was racing. My palms were sweating. And for the rest of the day, I walked around the house like a shadow. I cleaned up what didn't need cleaning. I went over in my mind every sentence I wanted to say, every accusation, every question I'd been holding back for nearly 2 decades. At 7 o'clock sharp, he arrived. Rodrigo was different. His hair had a few gray strands, wrinkles around his eyes, but he had the same calm way of walking, the same sad look that always hid more than it showed. He entered slowly, as if he were treading on sacred ground. I pointed to the couch and he sat down, tense. I stood, facing him. I know, I began. I know about the letters. Miguel found them. I read everything. He didn't react immediately. He just lowered his eyes. His hands were shaking slightly. So, now you know, he murmured. I know that you and Sofia had an affair, but I also know that you tried to stop it, that she threatened you, that you didn't want me to know, and that for some reason, you chose to leave me as if you had betrayed me by choice, as if you loved me less. Rodrigo looked up, and for a moment there were tears in them, because it was easier for you to hate me, Clara, than to see you fall apart. I knew you couldn't handle another loss, not after the baby. You were already destroyed inside, even without admitting it. But why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you tell me? Because I was weak. His voice broke. Because I saw the way you looked at Sofia. I knew what she meant to you. And I knew that if you knew, you would lose us both, all at once. And that's exactly what happened, I said, my voice low. Only you chose how. He nodded, silent. The tears were now flowing freely. And I stood there, watching the man I had once loved fall apart. I thought about writing to you later, about telling you. But when you moved, when you closed all the doors, I understood that maybe it would be better to let you live without hurting anymore. I condemned myself to be the mistake, Clara. But at least you were alive. You moved on. And Miguel, he grew up well. I sat down. For the first time in many years, I sat next to him. The silence was so heavy that it hurt my chest. Sofia, I began. She died, he said, cutting her off. Cancer. 2 years ago. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you didn't want to know. I hadn't expected that. Even after everything, even after the betrayal, hearing about her death hit me. Not with anger, but with something akin to pity. Or maybe it was just the end of a chapter. I haven't forgiven her, Rodrigo, and I don't even know if I'll forgive you. But I needed to understand. I needed to know that I wasn't just the betrayed woman, that I was loved. Truly. He took my hand. It was a light touch, an unpretentious gesture. You always were, Clara. I just didn't know how to protect it properly. We fell silent again, and for a moment I felt peace. A peace I hadn't known in years. Miguel loves you, I said. He wants to know if he can spend more time with you, if he can call you Dad without feeling guilty about me. Rodrigo cried again, and I let him cry, because maybe at that moment, forgiving wasn't forgetting, or starting over. Maybe forgiving was just stopping carrying the weight alone. And as he walked away that night, I realized something in me had changed. The pain was still there, but now it was a different pain, one that fit, one that no longer swallowed me. The past could not be undone, but the future, perhaps there was still room for truth, and for a new beginning. After that night, something changed inside me. It wasn't like turning on a light or turning a key. It was more like the end of a storm. The dust still in the air, the furniture out of place, but the silence afterward. That silence that finally lets you breathe. I slept little, but for the first time in many years, I woke up with a lighter chest. Miguel was still asleep, and I watched his serene face, his chest rising and falling, as if the world had not yet hurt him as it had hurt me. And at the same time, I realized that it was not true. He carried the scars of our history, even if they were not visible, even if he smiled easily. The absences, the silences, the half-truths, all of that was part of who he was. At breakfast, he came down half sleepy, but with that attentive look that only children have when they feel that something big has happened. "Did he come?" he asked. I nodded. "He came. Did you talk?" "Yes. And it was important. Very important." He looked relieved, but also tense. "Are you mad at me for showing you the cards?" "No." I held his hand across the table. "You gave me a gift. You gave me back a part of me that I thought had died. The part that still wanted to understand." He looked down, overcome with emotion. I knew how much this weighed on him. Growing up with separated parents was hard enough, but growing up with the feeling that one of them was the villain, it was even crueler. And now he was discovering that villains sometimes bleed too. "I've been thinking a lot tonight," he said, "and there's something I wanted to ask you." He can talk. I wanted to spend time with Dad. More than just weekends. I wanted to really get to know him. Now that I know everything, I feel like I need it. That hit me hard. It was a legitimate, fair request. And yet, it awakened that protective instinct within me. A part of me still wanted to keep him away from what had hurt me. But the other part, the wiser part, knew that denying it would be selfish. Miguel needed to build his own story with his father, without the distortions of my pain. "You can," I replied, my voice shaking, "as long as it's your choice, and he respects you in everything." He smiled. A wide, genuine smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. And in that smile, I found something I didn't even know I was looking for: peace. In the following days, Rodrigo started coming more often. There was no reconciliation, not in the romantic sense, but there was something perhaps rarer: understanding. Little by little, we began to adjust the pieces of the present without having to glue together the pieces of the past. Miguel started spending some nights at his father's house. He would come back with stories, with a sparkle in his eyes, with questions that only Rodrigo could answer. And instead of feeling jealous, I felt gratitude, because for the first time, our son was getting the chance to have something that the two of us had never had: a bond without ghosts. One Sunday afternoon, I was on the porch watering the plants when I heard footsteps behind me. "Mother?" I turned around. Miguel had an envelope in his hand. "This came for you. There is no sender." I picked up the envelope with damp hands. It was plain, white, with my name handwritten on it. I opened it slowly. Inside, there was a single piece of paper. I recognized the handwriting right away. "Sophia, if you are reading this, then it is because I did not have the courage to look for you in life, and maybe I shouldn't have. But there are things that we carry for years, without being able to let go. And this is mine." I stopped. I took a deep breath and continued. "You trusted me. You loved me like a sister. And I betrayed all of that. Not out of love for Rodrigo, because over time I realized he was never mine. I just wanted what you had. The security, the calm beauty of your life. And when I made that mistake with him, I realized it wasn't just a slip-up. It was a sick way of trying to be you." My hands were shaking. The letter was long, full of regrets, childhood memories, and secrets we had shared. But one sentence near the end took my breath away. "I pushed you away from him because I wanted to see you alone. But the truth is, deep down, I always knew that he only loved one woman in his life, and that woman was never me." I closed my eyes. The words burned. "Mom, is everything okay?" Miguel asked, worried. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, now it is." I kept the letter in the box where I keep everything that was important in my life, not as a symbol of pain, but as a reminder that even the deepest wounds can heal with time. In the following months, life became simple again. Mornings with coffee and light silence. Late afternoons with Miguel laughing out loud. Rodrigo's visits, always respectful, always punctual, And one day, as the sun was setting behind the trees in the backyard, Miguel sat down next to me and said, "Mom, thank you for letting me find out all this." I looked at him fondly. "Sometimes, son, we need to face the truth to stop living inside the wound." He smiled, a quiet smile, and I knew in that moment that we had won. Not as a perfect family, but as people who chose the truth, even when it hurt more than the lie. The years have passed, and every now and then, when the sun sets more slowly in the late afternoon, and the breeze carries that smell of dry leaves mixed with coffee, I find myself sitting on the same porch, remembering, not with pain, but with a kind of mature longing, the kind that no longer hurts, just keeps you company. Miguel is now a man. He is 26 years old, with a firm smile and the same eyes as his father. He works with photography, something that began as a hobby when he was a child, but became his profession after Rodrigo gave him his first analog camera, a family heirloom. They have a solid relationship, built little by little, with respect, silence when necessary, and frank conversations when life demands it. I see him every weekend. He still brings me flowers when he can. He still hugs me like I'm the most important thing in the world, and maybe I am. Because no matter how many mistakes I've made, I've never stopped fighting for him. Rodrigo moved on with his life. He remarried to a calm woman with no past like ours. We meet up from time to time for birthdays, for extended family lunches. He always treats me kindly, and I with serenity. We are nothing more than parents again, but parents who respect each other, who know what it took to get here. And that, sometimes, is more than many can manage. As for Sophia, well, I still have the letter. I kept it in an envelope with some old photos. I don't look at it often, but sometimes when I need to remember who I was, where I came from, I reread those words, and I realize that forgiveness isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily choice. It's waking up and deciding not to harbor anger, not to let what was done to me continue to define me. Miguel, on his 25th birthday, told me something that I remember as the greatest gift I have ever received. "Mom, I see how you handled everything, with dignity, without exposing anyone, without poisoning me against Dad. You could have made me hate him, but you chose to let me find out for myself. And for that, I admire you more than anyone else." That day, I cried, for the pain that no longer hurt me, for the woman who learned to survive disappointment without turning to stone, for the son who grew up whole, despite the cracks he inherited. And I also cried for myself, because in the end, I won. Not like the stories in the movies, where everything ends with a romantic reconciliation or a brilliant ending, but like real life, where winning is moving on. It's loving again, even if in a different way. It's looking in the mirror and seeing a whole woman, even with all the scars. Today, Miguel calls me from another state. He's getting married. He met a sweet girl, the kind who looks you in the eye with truth. He asks me if he can honor his father at the wedding. I say yes, that he should, because love that doesn't turn into resentment deserves to be celebrated, and because his story with his father is his, not mine. When I hang up, I pick up the box with the oldest memories. Photos, letters, Mother's Day cards made with colored pencils, and among them, Sophia's letter. I read it again, and I smile. I finally realize that forgiving is not forgetting. It is remembering with ease. And when the sun hides behind the trees and the wind caresses my face, I close my eyes and give thanks. Because life didn't spare me from pain, but it gave me enough strength to get through it. And most of all, he gave me a son who could show me the truth. And that's worth more than any happy ending in a movie. Comment below. Have you ever discovered a truth that changed your view of someone? Share this video with someone who needs to understand that not everything is always what it seems. End.